Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Finish Strong, How to End the Year on Better Financial Footing, presented by LawPay. My name is Joy Lukasiewicz, and I will be your host today. Please take a moment to look at the chat area in the lower right corner of your screen. If your chat module is not open, simply click on that chat icon at the bottom right corner of your screen. Within the chat box, you will see a drop-down menu with options next to the word To. If you have any technical problems today, please send a private message to host. If you have questions or comments for our presenter, please chat those to all panelists. And if you have comments or questions that you would like to share with the entire audience, send a chat to everyone. A recording of this webcast will be available tomorrow, and we will send all registrants an email with this link. I would like to thank today's sponsor, LawPay, the best in payment processing exclusively for attorneys. Our presenter today is Jordan Turk. Jordan is a practicing attorney in Texas and is also the legal content and compliance manager at LawPay. She earned a BA in Classics, History, and Religious Studies from the University of Texas and went on to earn her law degree from the University of Arkansas School of Law. Prior to LawPay, Jordan worked with a high-asset family law firm in Houston, Texas. Now I will pass everything off to Jordan.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Joy. All right, so let's get this started. And so, as Joy just said, this is Finish Strong, How to End the Year on Better Financial Footing. And just a little bit more about me. Also, thank God for Photoshop and wrinkle cream from this picture. Okay, well, so again, my name is Jordan Turk. I'm a practicing family law attorney down here in Texas, and then I'm also the legal content and compliance manager at LawPay. Now, prior to LawPay, I worked at a high-asset family law firm in Houston, and I think at the time we were the second biggest family law firm in the country, so I'm extremely familiar with kind of how that works and the difficulties that come along with kind of a bigger law firm and the intricacies that are involved in that too, as well as being a solo practitioner. So I've kind of run the gamut of everything. And I will tell y'all, and I bow down to probably every single person on here that's a legal administrator or firm administrator, because I just remember our firm administrator was a saint, and trying to track down the managing partner to input their time, or trying to corral all the attorneys to make sure that they got their hours in, or to make sure that they filled out the pre-bills and things like that. I mean, it was just a full-time job, and herding cats to try to get the attorneys to do what needed to be done to just send out a simple bill. So the fact that she put up with us and came to work every day with a smile on her face is just a testament to how wonderful she is, but also just how important every single one of you are with your firms. I mean, I'm really not kidding when I say that truly y'all are the people that empower the practice of law, because if nothing gets done at the firm on a payment level or on an invoice level or on an admin level, nothing happens with the attorneys don't get paid, nothing happens with the firm. So without legal administrators, legitimately, nothing would get done. So I say thank you, thank you, thank you for everything that you do. It is absolutely not going unnoticed. I loved our firm administrator, and to this day, I still send her flowers because she's just wonderful. All right, so let's get started. So I just told you a little bit about what I did what I do as a practicing family law attorney, but I'm also the legal content and compliance manager over at LawPay. So for those of you kind of unfamiliar with what LawPay is or what it does, we're essentially a payment processor for attorneys for online or electronic payments. So essentially, if a client comes into your firm and wants to pay a $5,000 retainer, but they want to pay it by credit card, that's what we help facilitate and what we do. So we've been vetted and approved by all 50 state bars. We serve more than 150,000 attorneys, more than 44,000 firms, which is kind of crazy. We've been around for over 15 years. And little side note, kind of weird how everything circles back around, but I actually interned for LawPay way back when in my undergraduate days, and we just won't talk about that and how long ago that was. And then we also offer bar-approved CLEs and webinars and things like that completely free of charge. You don't even have to be a LawPay member. And then also, as was mentioned by Joy earlier, we are part of the ALA member discount program, which is amazing. And I've never been called a VIP before in my life, so I'm just going to soak this in. That VIP is part of that too. So thank you very much, Ailey, for having me. And so yeah, if you have any questions about what LawPay does or online payment processing and things like that, just shoot me an email, let me know, or you can put anything you want to in the chat, and I will hopefully be able to answer it for you. All right, so moving on to the agenda, what we're going to talk about today. And also, I want to say this is not a product pitch or anything like that. So you do not have to be taking credit cards for this webinar and this webcast to apply to you. None of that. My goal at the end of the day is to give you tips and tools and tricks to go and take back to your firm today to implement some strategies, hopefully, that can get your collections up before the end of the year. So that's the goal. You absolutely don't need to be utilizing online payments to get something out of this presentation, period, end of story. And I also wanted to give a little bit of background about why I'm so passionate about this. At my prior kind of bigger family law firm, my bonuses were tied to my account receivables. So I could bill as many hours as I wanted to, but if the clients weren't paying those bills, I wasn't getting my bonus. So I became very adept very quickly about payment strategies, how to get more money in the door, and kind of trials and tribulations of getting paid on aged accounts that I'm going to, impart some wisdom hopefully on y'all today so you can make an impact with your firm. And hey, at the end of the day, my ultimate goal is to make you as a firm administrator look good. Period, end of story. I want you to look good. I want you to make your life easier. I want you to be able to go and prove that you are an asset to your firm. And so essentially, I want to give you some tools today for you to be able to go in there and say, hey, partners, can we sit down? I think we need a strategy for these aged receivables and these invoices that haven't gotten paid. Here's what I'm thinking we do. So I want you to be able to go and provide a tangible, valuable asset to your firm. So what we're going to talk about today, for one, the basics. So basics as far as accounts receivable are concerned, and how these apply to your firm, the impact of COVID-19 on your receivables, and 4 is really the meat and potatoes of everything, and that's really, really fun stuff, are the steps to collect. So assessing the situation, prioritizing receivables, embracing technology, we're going to go through all of that. There's some really cool things in there like email templates and all this stuff that hopefully will be of use to you. So without further ado, if I know how to work a computer, here we go. So first off, let's start with the basic premise. If your pay is dependent upon your collections, like mine was, then you want to collect on as many outstanding invoices as possible. And so every legal administrator knows, and I know this is not going to shock anybody on this call, but some attorneys are better than others when it comes to following up on collections, or let's face it, even getting invoices out the door. So, and as everybody is aware too, just even through life experience or firm experience alone, the longer an invoice goes without getting paid, the less likely it is that it will ever be paid. So basics, and a little caveat to this, I am not in any way, shape, or form an accountant or a CPA. My mom worked in accounting her entire life, and I'm sure she would be absolutely wanting to strangle me right now if I told her, I didn't know what AR meant, 3 years ago. So we're just not going to talk about that. So what is AR? AR stands for accounts receivable. So essentially, this is money that is still due and owing to your firm. Now, what is aged AR? So aged AR can be different it depends on the firm and how they want to do it, but essentially how I define it is, this is accounts receivable that are more than 120 days old. So if an invoice was sent out 120 days ago and has not been paid for 120 days or more, that's what I consider aged AR when it comes to my firm and how I kind of treat it. And why is this even important? Which is kind of a no-brainer, but you'd be shocked as kind of what happens and what flows from it. So it's important because it absolutely applies to your firm and their end of year finances. So when firms are looking at data forecasting for the next year and they're looking at their budget, i.e., hey, can we afford to hire a second receptionist? Can we afford to hire a runner? Things like that. All that goes into data forecasting. And if you're missing a sizable chunk of your firm's revenue because there's all this, aged AR lying around, that's going to impact how they deal with end of year financing as well as forecasting for the next year. It also absolutely impacts bonuses because, again, I didn't get a bonus unless I was collecting on my AR. And then also, as far as partners go, it's going to affect their distributions, right? Because if they're not getting as much money as they should in the door, they're not going to get the distributions that they are expecting, which then goes in very well to office morale, because if the partners aren't happy, chances are no one in the office is going to be happy. So it's, to me, very important to see if there's something that can be done, essentially, that makes everyone happy. And if the partners are happy, hopefully there's a trickle-down effect that everybody else in the office is also happy, because there's definitely a trickle-down effect when the partners are unhappy. And then lastly, dealing with client satisfaction. And this is an interesting one, because I feel like a lot of people ask, well, hey, if somebody's not paying their bill or their invoice, why aren't we just giving them over to a collections firm and letting a collections firm handle that? That just seems the easiest thing to do. The problem is, when firms aren't getting that money in, and when you have AGR, they're either going to say, okay, yeah, we'll push it over to a collections firm, or they're just going to write it off. The problem with sending it to a collections firm, especially for family law, is, for one, that client is absolutely never going to come back to you and is never going to refer you clients. And for a lot of law offices, your lifeblood is referrals. And that's your goal at the end of the day, is to be, an attorney's goal really, truly at the end of the day is to be able to become a rainmaker, where they're just able to draw in clients on their name alone. And so what you really want to do is keep up that referral rate, which when you send a client and their balance over to a collections firm, chances are very, very low that that client's going to be happy with you, even if you did a great job for them on their case. So that's one aspect of it. And then second, especially for family law, it happens all the time. And I'm sure if there are some members of ALA on here that deal in family law, you're going to understand this and identify with it. But a lot of times when you try to go after these people and you bring them over to a collection firm that will hopefully collect on your behalf their legal fees, they're going to come back and the client's going to say, or ex-client is going to say, I cannot believe that you're trying to get this money out of me. Guess what? I'm reporting you to the bar. I'm filing a grievance against you, and you charge too much anyway, and I can't believe you. So even though they agreed to pay that, they knew going into it how much it was going to be, you went to trial, you won at trial, you got them custody, and now all of a sudden when you're asking for payment for work you've already done, they're going to say, oh, hey, I'm going to file a grievance against you. And it's baseless. And they have absolutely no leg to stand on with it, but it's going to take time away from the attorney's day to have to fight that or worry about it, even though it's completely groundless. So then the attorney has to go, is it worth my billable hourly rate to fight this grievance, or should I just write this off? Client owes $5,000. Should I just write it off and not risk a grievance at all? So honestly, that's what ends up happening a lot of the time, is that the attorney is just going to write it off, or the firm is just going to write it off, because to them it's not worth what could happen in the alternative. There we go. I can't work a computer to save my life. Okay. All right. So as far as the impact of COVID-19 on what's happening with payments. So, of course, people are losing their jobs, so you have less clients that are able to pay their bill in full, which has absolutely happened to me. And then you have more clients asking for payment plans because they can't pay everything at once because, again, they lost their job. Or you have a lot of clients saying, I have a job. I'm very grateful that I have a job during this time. However, what if I don't have a job next month? And I just spent all of my savings on this legal bill. So you don't necessarily want to force them to say, I don't really care about your family, or if you can eat, you need to pay in full, because again, that's, for one, that's very sad and very, mean-spirited, and two, you're not going to get referrals that way from clients when they're saying, hey, I'm just trying to feed my family. So it's a little bit of, you need to be able to try to meet clients where they're at and actually offer them payment plans and things like that. We'll get into that in a little bit, but this is really what I'm seeing across the country because I talk to law firms every day. And also you just see more clients simply walking on their bill. And this is going to be different in every state because some states make it very, I would say, easy to go and chase after that money and to chase after that payment. States like Texas are what you would call very debtor-friendly. So meaning the client, there's little that you can do to actually collect on that without, going and getting a receivership and doing all this other stuff and really kind of muddying the waters with your client. So just something to keep in mind as far as COVID-19 is concerned, I'm sure, and I would love to hear from y'all as far as how this is impacting your firm and if you're seeing kind of the same trends or not. And then this also means, sorry, going back to this, this also means that it's going to be harder to collect all of your money in full for this year, which is why you need to be even more vigilant when it comes to invoicing and following up on those invoices. And really, I know that all of y'all are probably familiar with this, but really getting on the attorneys and making them do what they need to do in order to get this money in the door, which I know, easier said than done. Okay, so in your quest to collect, you need to consider these important questions. So 1, how can I ensure that all or most of my bills get paid? And then 2, what behaviors, habits, skills, and processes will help maximize my collections? And here's the deal. These are kind of, no-brainer, throwaway questions you would think to yourself, but also, when is the last time that you ever got to actually sit down when it wasn't hectic and when you weren't putting out a million fires at your firm? When is the last time you got to sit down and actually think about this question? And the fact that you're here right now is incredible. And that, it shows that you're dedicated to this and that you take this seriously and that you do want to get more money in the door by the end of the year. But really, truly, when you're going into it and you're doing research about what can make my life easier, what can make it easier for the firm, what can make the firm more profitable when it comes to collections, these are the 2 questions that you really need to consider and that you really need to sit down and think about, which I know, again, easier said than done to find the time. Right, so historical ways that lawyers have tried to maximize collections. So lawyers kind of fall into 3 different buckets as far as how they get paid. So 1, a lot of attorneys require cash up front in flat fee situations. So say I want to draft a will and a client wants me to draft it, perfect. It'll be $2,500 for everything. You pay it right now up front, and that's all I'm going to charge, and that's all I need. So it's perfect, great. Harder to do in things like family law because everybody says, oh yeah, this should be a flat fee. Everything's agreed to. My wife and I are in total agreement to everything, including custody of the children. And again, any member of ALA that's on here that does anything with family law knows how much of a lie that absolutely is when somebody says, oh, we agree on everything, don't worry, I just need a flat fee. So easier to do in different facets of law. But the second part of this is, second way that lawyers use to maximize their collections is they say, okay, I need a very large retainer that's going to be sufficient enough to cover expected fees and expenses. So essentially, and this is where I live, and that's where a lot of family law attorneys live, is in this, where you say, okay, the client comes in, it's going to be a divorce, $5,000 is what I'm going to charge you for the retainer. Perfect, done. However, and what most people know when it comes to cases like this that can change from day to day so quickly is that retainer is probably not going to be the cost of the case, even if you quote a very large retainer. So that's part of the problem too, is you get stuck, and every family law attorney knows this, you kind of get stuck with the retainer's gone, the client has a high bill, and then trying to get paid on the bill after the fact, after the retainer is depleted, is difficult. So the goal is to always have money in the retainer, and yes, that would be absolutely lovely and great every single time. But again, easier said than done, so there are certain things that you can start doing to try to cover you, and we'll go over that in the next webinar in December when we're talking about setting yourself up on good footing for 2021. But just kind of keep that in mind that when you say retainer, usually the retainer is always blown, by the first month or 2 of a case. And then the last part of it that attorneys can do is they choose to limit their practice to predictable clients or controllable tasks, which is great. So these are attorneys that can be choosy about who comes in their door and who they choose to represent, which is phenomenal in everyone's dream, but not super practical for most attorneys that are, trying to put food on the table and pay their staff and things like that. You really just want to increase as many clients as possible to get your revenue up. So that's usually how that kind of works. But then you hit this 4th quarter crisis. So as law firms enter the 4th quarter, so that's the last 3 months of the year, most firms are starting to think about their end of calendar year finances, including what can be done to increase their receivables and decrease the amount of bad debt that they have on their books. And so a firm's ultimate goal is generally to enter the new year sans unpaid invoices. And that has always been my dream. It has never worked out one time in these past few years, but because there's always something that pops up, and y'all are familiar with that. But that's always the goal. I want to be in the black by January 1, period, end of story, and that's always what I strive to do. And remember, The longer a bill sits unpaid, the less likely it is that we'll ever get paid, which is what we talked about before. I mean, and think about it. Excuse me. What are the chances that that a client that you have that hasn't paid their bill in 6 months, what are the chances that they're going to wake up after 6 months and their first thought is, you know what, I'm going to pay my attorney? Probably not going to happen, and I think we all know that. It's the dream, it's the hope, but it's probably not going to happen. And so since outstanding receivables can affect a partner's distribution or an associate's bonus, or, hey, maybe a staff's discretionary bonus, another primary goal of this is to maximize profits to the firm's employees. So here we go, meat and potatoes, good times, my favorite. So steps to collect on unpaid invoices. So step 1, assess the situation. And again, these slides will be available afterwards, so you'll end up getting these plus the email templates and things like that. So don't worry about that. So step 1, assess the situation. So first off, you have to make a list. And check it twice, but make a list. And your first step is this list has to be your clients who have outstanding invoices or receivables. And then, so essentially what I would do is put it on a spreadsheet, and you have the client name and information on it, including the matter number so that you can log them and track them in your system. The client's outstanding balance, how aged said balance is. So if the client hasn't paid that invoice in 30 days or 60 days or 120 days or over 120 days, you need to note that on the spreadsheet because that's going to be important later. And then I always like to know the date and amount of the client's last payment. And I like that because, hey, what if they owe $5,000, but they made a payment of $500 a month ago? So yes, the $4,500 is still, an aged receivable, from 7 months ago, but I at least know that they've attempted or started to make payments on it, which is invaluable when I'm contacting them and I can say something like, hey, I saw that you made this payment. That's great. Thank you so much. Like, when can we, expect the next one, and kind of get them on a de facto payment plan and things like that. So it's important to know for when you contact the client or when the client contacts the firm and they want to know, hey, when's the last time I paid and how much do I have left? And so here's a little bit what the spreadsheet looks like. This is very, very much bare bones of it all. So, go with me on that one. But essentially, and if you want this, I can send it to you, but it's very much bare bones. So again, client name, matter number, outstanding balance, how many days it's been outstanding. Usually I break that into 30, 60, 90, 120, and 120 plus, obviously. And then the amount of their last payment. Oh, where'd I go? There we go. Sorry, guys. And then, Oop, no, I lost it. There it goes. Okay. And then next, use the firm's technology to your advantage. So chances are many of you have a practice management system that you use for your firm, say like Tabs or Zola, something like that. And chances are highly, highly likely that if you use a practice management tool that caters to law firms, they can already make you something like this. So there's probably something in their system that you can go and pull, and you'll be able to get all this information without having to do too much at all. Like, probably click a couple boxes of what you want, and then it'll spit out a spreadsheet for you. So what I would do is, for one, go and look at your practice management system. See if you're able to pull this, all these people with outstanding balances, and see if you're able to get that information. And if you're not, I would definitely contact your representative for that practice management system and tell them, hey, here's exactly what I'm looking for. And chances are they'll be able to pull that report for you in a couple minutes. So definitely take advantage of that, saves you time. All right, and then I'm going to get the hang of this, I swear. Okay, and then step 2, you need to prioritize your receivables. Now, what do I mean by that? So again, I'm not a CPA, so this is just a name that I made up. And I'm assuming other people use it, who knows, but please feel free to school me on it if I'm completely wrong. But essentially, you'll have your aged receivables and what I call here your young receivables. So these are invoices or payments that haven't been paid, obviously, unpaid, that are 0 to 120 days old. So nothing's been received for 120 days or less from these people. And so what you'll do is get that on a spreadsheet, all the ones that are that young, and then separate them out so you have just those young receivables in front of you. And then reserve some time on your calendar to work on these, or reserve some time on the attorney's calendar to work on these. And again, I know how difficult it is to make an attorney do something, especially when it involves payments or kind of, admin things. I know that can be difficult sometimes. And again, it's like herding cats. But this is important. This does put money in their pocket. So I would hope that they're going to be a little bit more receptive, but we'll kind of talk about tips and tricks to use if they're not. So for you, I would reserve an hour on your calendar to work on these. It'll probably take you less time. And what's going to happen is there's going to be an email that's sent out to each of these clients that have unpaid balances that are from your young receivables list. But the key to this is that the email needs to come from the attorney who's worked on the case, because it carries some gravitas with it, and I'll go into it, but it's going to be more receptive to clients if it comes from the attorney and not from billing or from admin or from a paralegal, because there's also kind of a shame factor when the attorney has to get involved when it comes to payments and the clients are, a little bit chastised or they feel chastised. And it's just a little added benefit that you can use that will hopefully get more money in the door. And you need to be very clear and concise in your email. And when I'm talking about this email, what I'm really referring to is something like this. So you'll say, hey client, I hope you're well. My records show that you have an outstanding balance of blank due. Please remit payment immediately. If you have any questions about your bill, please do not hesitate to contact me. Again, this is their attorney. So you can pay the balance online by clicking the link below my signature. Thank you. And then you'd have the attorney's email block, the link to pay online. So very simple, very succinct. And you'd kind of be shocked at how many attorneys or how many clients reach back out and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I think I just missed the prior email from billing and I forgot to pay it. So I've already paid it. I've gone online. Thank you so much. And so I was always shocked when I would send these out and clients would actually respond and say, oh, sorry about that, I've paid. So I think so many attorneys kind of miss out on that and miss out on that opportunity for an easy payment because they just don't want to go and try, they don't want to go and try to just send these out, which is kind of crazy because this would take maybe 20 minutes out of their day to do because it's just a template. But what you can do, and especially if the attorneys that you work for are extremely busy and it's like pulling teeth to get them to do anything, what you can do as the legal admin is basically put all of these templates up, fill in all the information for all of the clients so that basically all the attorney has to do when you show it to them is glance over it, approve it, and then click send on their email. So very, very easy. We'll take the attorney maybe 30 seconds to click through and send them, and then you basically, you've provided a service to this attorney and you've made yourself more of a valuable asset because, hey, I took work off your plate, I know how busy you are, and look what I've done for you. And again, the email's already drafted, so feel free when you get the copy of the slides to tweak this. Definitely tweak it, your clients might be a little bit different, your client base might be different, and you want to do some different language with it, feel free. Now let's get to the wonderful spot. This is my favorite because this is what I had to deal with all the time for family law. And this is for your aged receivables. So over 120 days old, you're going to put them on a list. So they're already there for you because you've already called out the young receivables. So again, you're going to set time on your calendar, or your attorney is going to set time on their calendar. I think let's be real here, probably most of this will fall to you because attorneys sometimes can be terrible. I will say that I was not that person, and I loved our firm administrator, and I love you, Angie, wherever you are. Okay, so then first of all, you have your aged AR. So you're going to put that list, and you're actually going to call that list too. So you're going to separate that list into two separate groups. One are the clients you believe can and will pay their balance, and two, your dream list. Now, when I say clients you believe can and will pay their balance, these are clients that, let's say, they've been really great, they've paid, but they stopped, and then they tell you, hey, I want to pay you in full, but I have to wait until my tax refund gets in. So I'll keep them on my ledger all day long because I know that they'll do it. Or say that you have a divorce case and you have a money judgment and you know that the opposing party is supposed to pay you, right? They owe you $60,000, and you know that they're going to pay you because they're good for it, and plus you have a judgment an order that's signed by a judge that said they have to pay you. But what if they don't have to pay you for 60 days, 90 days after the divorce? So you pretty much know you're going to get paid in full. So at the end of the day, you want to get paid in full on that, you're not going to be offering them a deal or doing anything. So you're going to keep that probably on your balance sheet. Period, end of story. You're going to carry that debt until the following year when you can get paid. So people that you think can and will pay their full balance, keep that just keep that to the side. Don't touch that list. The second list, your dream list. So these are the people that you never, ever, 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 ever thought would pay you. Period, end of story. You pretty much have given up. You've written them off. It's been 6 months. They haven't responded to you at all. You've said everything in the book, and you might have threatened to send them to collections, just as a threat, and they're not responding, and that if they were to pay you tomorrow, you would honestly think it was the second coming or something. Like, it would just be, there's no way that you expected payment from them, but it's a nice surprise when they do. So you have that dream list. Take your dream list and then determine the discount you'd be willing to offer to that dream list to get them to pay something. So for instance, when I did this, and what I found most effective is I offered them a 50% discount on their bill if they paid within a specified period of time. And 50% sounds like a lot, but remember, this was money that you never thought you were going to get anyway. And so when you're thinking about what discount you would offer them to pay something, you need to think of something that's actually going to entice them. So if you say, hey, I'll give you 20% off your bill if you pay within the next, 3 days, they're not going to bite on that because these are people that were going to walk on their bill anyway. So 20% to them, they don't really care, in my experience. I think 50% is kind of the number where they'll kind of wake up and say, oh my God, okay, well, I can borrow some money from family, or I can, I've got some stuff like hidden away with this. I can absolutely pay 50% of my bill. And so you'll get more traction, I think, out of that. And again, it needs to be the attorney that sends this email because of the gravitas from that and because they were the one working the case and just kind of what we discussed before. So you can either have the attorney do this and provide them with all the information that you need, or you can just draft up all the templates for all of these aged accounts and have the attorney review, and all they have to do is click send. So how I would frame that and how I historically did it, which hopefully this would be the only year that you have to make this plan, because my hope is that for 2021, you're going to be off on much better footing. You're not going to kind of get into this receivables rabbit hole anymore. So hopefully this is the only time you will ever have to do this. But essentially the sample email will say, hey client, hope you're well. My records show that you have an outstanding balance of, let's say, $10,000. I've spoken with our billing department and I was able to work out a deal for you. Now, this is part of the reason why it needs to come from the attorney, because even if you don't have a billing department, it sounds fancy, and it sounds like you're actually providing a service to the client, and you're giving them and you've thought about them, and hey, I did this for you, client, like I know that things are hard, like I've spoken to them, and here's what they're letting me do for you. So it's just kind of a psychological factor with that. So then you go on to say, if you remit payment of $5,000, which is half of their outstanding balance, within the next 5 business days, the firm will forgive the remaining balance. However, if payment is not received within that time frame, you will still owe the full amount, $10,000. Please be advised that this opportunity will not be offered again. If you have any questions about your bill, please don't hesitate to contact me. You can pay the $5,000 online by clicking the link below my signature. Thank you. Attorney signature block, link to pay online. Super, super simple, very, very concise, highly, to me in the past, highly effective. Because clients will just go off and say, oh my gosh, if I could cancel half my debt. And so at my prior firm, we had people, that only owed, let's say, $2,000. So they jumped at this and they paid, $1,000. We also had clients that owed, because, hey, high asset divorce cases, we had clients, I think, that owed $80,000. We knew we wouldn't get that money because maybe husband took off and ran off to South America with everything in a suitcase and we're never going to see him or this money again, which actually does happen. And so, you have these super, super high receivables, and you know that your client doesn't have the money and probably won't have the money, but she could probably come up with half of that. And so we also have people take advantage of that when it's super, super, super high like that, which was crazy and very, very cool. And then say you have a managing attorney or a supervising attorney. And you have a managing attorney and a supervising attorney, and neither of them wants to deal with this because they're just busy. They're in court all day. This is the last thing that they want, and they just want somebody else to handle it for them. You can do that. And I recommend what you do is kind of outsource it to one of the associate attorneys who also worked on the case, right? Because that's important. Because if somebody has a question about their bill or wants to pay this, I think it's important that they have a point of contact to somebody who's actually familiar with the case. So, and then at that point, give a little incentive to the associate and say, hey, If you get this in the door and you get them to pay whatever amount that they can pay of that, that 50%, I'll give you 25% of that off the top. And so it incentivizes those associates to really go after those people. So for instance, you'll send that email out and then say they don't respond to the email. Okay, well then maybe the associate that's really invested now because they want that 25%, maybe the associate's going to go and then call that person and call that client and say, hey, did you receive this email? We're only offering this for the next 4 days. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. So things like that, and they can get on it more, and they at least have a little skin in the game at that point. And so you can make these offers. I mean, at my prior firm, they basically said, hey, for any of the cases here, if you get them to pay this 50% amount, you're going to get 50% of that off the top. So period, end of story. If you got somebody to pay $5,000 or $10,000, you're going to get $2,500 off the top. And it was considered like a bonus. So highly, highly effective. And remember, this is kind of like a Hail Mary for the end of the year just to get money in the door. And again, these are only for accounts that you thought would never pay you anything. So you had already written them off. You had already prepared to write them off. So just keep that in mind. All right, and step 3, embrace technology. So a little bit of background on this. Only about half of all U.S. adults make sure they have cash on hand, which shouldn't really shock anybody, especially if you're dealing with money in the law office and clients coming in to pay. And then 79% of people now prefer to pay with a credit or debit card. And that study was done in 2018, so chances are that number's probably in the high 80s at this point, and then with COVID, probably in the mid-90s, quite honestly. And 74% of people pay household bills online. 79% of people have switched to paperless billing. Again, this shouldn't shock anybody because chances are you pay a bill online somehow. And then 70% of people, of consumers, said having multiple ways to pay a bill increases their satisfaction. 70% increases their satisfaction. It's an easy psychological thing to do to be able to offer them multiple ways to pay their legal bill. And then more people are ditching their checkbooks. So over half of consumers, 55%, don't use or rarely carry a checkbook because, hey, at the end of the day, cash is king, or I'll take a check also. But if half of my clients aren't, using a checkbook, that becomes an issue, especially for this AJR campaign. Because if I'm telling you, hey, you have 5 days to pay this because I want a sense of urgency so that they pay it immediately and they don't second guess themselves, right? So if I'm doing this and then I say, okay, yes, you can pay by check, well, then I have to say, okay, you have to go, for 1, find your checkbook, and then 2, write the check out, 3, find an envelope, 4, find a stamp, 5, send it to me, and then 6, I have to wait for it to get here, 7, I have to get it and I have to deposit it in the bank, and then 8, I have to wait for that check to clear. And so all that, can take upwards of a week, and so then you've kind of lost that urgency and you don't even know if they're going to pay it. My preference is always, hey, you can pay online, I get instant notification, and they can pay immediately. So it's always kind of my thing with that, especially when it comes to collections campaign. It's hard to say, hey, we're going to offer this deal, but you need to do it in cash or check. Especially with COVID, it's difficult because also nobody wants to leave their house. So if they don't want to come by and drop a check by your office, it just gets more difficult. And also people's expectations of businesses are shifting too. So 65% of people expect to be able to pay for services online, and 79% expect local service providers to offer the same payment options as big national brands. So if I can, if I could pay for my groceries at Walmart, why can't I pay for my legal fees with a credit card? Walmart can take it. Why can't my attorney? It doesn't make sense to me as a consumer. So that's something that you also have to grapple with too. And then if there are those on this call who aren't taking credit cards and desperately want their firm to consider it because at the end of the day, it would make life easier when you're not having to wait months to track down payments and things like that. This is something that you can show them from the Clio Legal Trends Report. So in 2019, they found that firms that utilized electronic payments collected over $10,000 more per attorney than firms that did not use electronic payments. And this number is actually shot up for 2020. So Clio projected that, hey, firms that utilize electronic payments, they're going to collect about $15,000 more than firms that did not use electronic payments per attorney. Per attorney. That's not even as a firm total. So just something to consider there if you're trying to show them and say, hey, I think we should really consider it. The clients want it, and it's going to be more profitable for the firm at the end of the day. And some really great other statistics that you can take back too is that 40% of clients that were surveyed for this legal trend report said that they would never hire a lawyer who didn't take credit or debit cards. 39% of attorneys who accept online payments get paid faster than those using traditional billing methods, which is kind of a no-brainer, right? If I can send you an electronic invoice and you can pay electronically, the chances are that's going to absolutely be faster than cash or check or receiving cash or check in my office. And then the best ones here, 57% of electronic payments get paid within the same day that they are billed, and 85% of electronic payments get paid within the same week that they're billed. 85%. And so if you're thinking about that and you're still just using checks, or if you're still just relying on cash, you have to ask yourself, am I losing out on, for one, potential clients, if some said that they wouldn't even hire an attorney who didn't take credit cards, and then two, am I losing out on this potential revenue or collections because I'm not offering the service? And then COVID's only amplified this, right? So if a client doesn't want to leave their home to go to the store or to pay their, let alone pay their legal fees, you need to be giving them online options. And so right now my practice is completely remote. So I do my potential new client meetings online. I send them a link beforehand over LawPay, and I say, okay, here's my rate and here's the amount that I need for the consultation. And so you can pay online by, clicking this link, and then we won't start this consultation until payment is confirmed. So it's easy to send that LawPay link out. They pay it, I get confirmation immediately, and I can go into that meeting knowing that at least I have that money and they've paid. And at the end of the day, a digital transformation is happening in the legal space. So technology increases exponentially, and at the end of the day, I do really, really feel, having practiced and done all this, I really do feel that if you're not taking online payments, you are going to be leaving money on the table. And then as far as what they give you and what this opens up to you, for one, it improves communication with your client, because you can go and email them immediately and say, hey, you owe XYZ, mediation is tomorrow, I need this. And so you can email them immediately with a payment link. They can pay anytime, anywhere. They don't have to go in and wait for your office hours or wait for your office to open to call the front desk to make a payment over the phone, which is very annoying for everyone involved, including the client and the receptionist that probably doesn't want to be doing that, And then it also puts the ability to pay in their hands so they feel like they have some modicum of control with it. Gets you instant payment confirmation, gets you paid faster. So to me, it just increases efficiency and reduces friction as far as your client and their pocketbook is concerned. And you can automate everything. I mean, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. I don't want to sound salesy. I just want y'all to get paid, and I want y'all to be able to take this back to your firms to say, this is something that we can do that's going to hopefully increase these collections. Period, end of story. I think that we can get more money in the door. And that's it. So I hope that that you've been able to take away something from this. I've implemented these strategies before. So these are something that have worked for me and worked for others. So I'm not just kind of, blowing smoke here. So, but if you have any questions whatsoever, I think somebody asked for that spreadsheet. You can definitely email me. I will send it to you. I will help you in any way that I can. I'm very passionate about payments, obviously, sadly maybe, as some might point out, but it is what it is. So if you need anything or have any questions, please just let me know.
Thank you so much, Jordan. We do have a few questions that have come in, so we'll open this up. I did want to remind everyone, if you did have a question or comment to share with Jordan or to ask Jordan, if you would put that in the chat box and change the to option to everyone, and then we will get those covered. All right. Great presentation, Jordan. Thanks for all that information. To start off, I will read, I guess this is from Anne, a dream list for discount. What's the likelihood is that they won't take the discount, so owe the full amount, and they actually pay the full amount?
Oh my God, wouldn't that be the dream, right? To me, that never happened, truly, because you just have to be very careful about how you organize that list. And legitimately, if I thought that there was ever a chance that they were going to pay me, they wouldn't be going on that dream list. So it really depends on what you do. And it's easier, honestly, for family law attorneys because you get to see what assets each side has for the marriage. So you kind of are able to know, like, oh, would they ever be able to pay me, period, end of story, if they owed 20 grand and, and the estate didn't have it. So it was easier for family law because you knew kind of how everything stood, I feel. But I would love it if they said, no, I don't want this discount. I absolutely want to pay you in full. I would love that.
Have you ever seen that happen?
No, but I'm waiting for the day, honestly.
Absolutely. And then we have Kathy asking, which do you find more effective, the emails or a phone call with collection efforts?
Emails for me, because I think it's a touchy subject for clients. And I think some clients are actually embarrassed because, hey, they do want to pay you. So even people that I represented that were, friends of the family and things like that, I think they were embarrassed that they couldn't pay it. And so when I sent this out, they just thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't thank you enough for even offering this to me, things like that. But I think for them, it was easier to send an email so that they didn't have to feel awkward about it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then we have Brian asking, if we cannot get payment from someone, are we able to send them a 1099 to cover the balance written off?
That I have no idea. I would talk to your CPA about that, or your COO. I would have no idea about that.
And Christopher is commenting or asking for comments. The challenge, of course, with getting too many credit card payments is that you lose 2 to 3% of the payment for the fees, which is another discount. Do you have any comment on that? We try to get ACH payments.
Oh, yeah. ACH is king. And if you could do e-check, too, which LawPay offers e-check. So I think they only charge, $2 per e-check, and that's it. There's no, other fees with that. The problem is you offer credit cards as a convenience. So I was and still am more than willing to take that 2 to 3% hit if it means that I can get paid immediately. And then a lot of attorneys already kind of build that cost into the back end, right? So if my whole thing is I had just had to work an extra, 0.15 or 0.25 to cover that bill, I would do it at the end of the day. So it just kind of depends, but as long as you go in with that expectation of, okay, yeah, this is going to cost me 2 to 3%, and also some states now allow you to surcharge, which means that you can pass on that percentage for the credit card processing fee. You can actually pass that on to the client, so long as you meet specific standards, like you notify them in writing that here's the surcharge, here's what this is, and that you'd be charged, and if they agree to do it. So I think that's an avenue available depending on what state you're in. Some states outlaw that still, but some states say it's perfectly fine. So it completely depends. But for me, I was just always cognizant of the credit card fees, and I just built it into my practice because I just didn't want a client ever to not pay because they saw that I was, surcharging or, I would much rather just get paid, period, is my thing.
Understandable. All right. And then have you seen an impact with COVID-19 and electronic payments?
Oh, yeah, we've gotten, I think, a lot more attorneys kind of were forced to go into the 21st century a little bit with it, where it's because their entire practice had to go remote. And I think firms that had already adapted, it was a lot easier, the transition to work from home and things like that. So it's been, I think, having to get a lot of attorneys up to speed on kind of what this is and things like that. But they're all going to find that this is a benefit to them and a boon to their practice at the end of the day. But definitely a lot more remote work. As I said, all of my stuff has been remote. I just had a 4-day trial completely over Zoom, which never would have expected that, had you asked me this time 2019. So it's all been very interesting.
Absolutely. And then Timothy's asking, what's your thoughts on clients requesting a payment plan, as in terms, time frame, etc.?
Oh, yeah. So it completely, for one, depends on the client. But I think what I ended up doing on a lot of them is, for one, it would depend on how big their outstanding balance was. So I had somebody, I think, who owed me $30,000 after her custody case, and I think we settled on, I would rather get something than nothing. Like, I knew she wasn't ever going to be paying me $30,000 as a lump sum, just wasn't going to be possible. So we decided on, I want to say, $400 a month. And so she's actually still paying on that, still very diligent. The key to payment plans is, especially if you do with a credit card, is to get what they call an authorization form, which LawPay offers for free on their website. You don't even have to be a LawPay customer, or you can email me for it. But essentially, it's an authorization form that the client signs, where they put in their credit card information, the amount and the how often it's charged is in there too. Like, say it's going to be $400 every month until paid in full, things like that. All that's on there. The client signs off on it. And that authorization form is super important because in the event that there's ever a chargeback, so say the client tries to go and, dispute the charge and say, I never agreed for my attorney to charge my credit card like that, you have the form that they signed. So chances are highly, highly likely that the bank is going to side with you, the attorney, or you, the firm. So just make sure to do that. But as far as time frame, it's really going to depend on the amount and if you know the client can actually pay it. Because I would love to say, hey, you're going to be paying me $5,000 a month until, you know, the 30 grand is met. But if I know, especially what their financial situation is, and I know that's not possible, I also don't want to set them up for failure because I still want to get paid at the end of the day. And granted, it'll take me longer to get there, but at least I'll be getting some sort of money in the door.
Great. And then I have a request. If you could please go over some of those percentages and any tools to convince the company to start taking credit cards and electronic payments.
We have some stuff that we can send you, so just shoot me an email at jturk@lawpay.com. We absolutely have, because I mean we do this all the time for big firms and things like that, and to kind of push everybody into the 21st century. So definitely send an email to me. I can send you kind of what we have and literature we have that we send to firms and things like that, or what we do when we talk to firms of all sizes, basically, and how this is a benefit and what happens. But also I can send you the legal trends report that I cited in here that Clio puts out every year, which has just phenomenal stuff in there as far as payment goes. But the percentages, and I'll say this, when you're shopping around for a payment processor, so say you're like, okay, I absolutely want to take credit cards, I'm ready, where do I start? And if you wanted to do your homework and you wanted to look at LawPay and others, perfectly fine, but just be careful of some services because they're going to pull what I like to say is a bait and switch essentially. They'll say, hey, we can do this, we can process all your cards for 1.5%. Which sounds amazing. Sounds amazing. You can do a rewards card for 1.5%. That's great, but that's also not possible because how processing fees work is the base rate, the interchange rate, is set by the credit card brands. So you can't dip below that base rate, and there's no way that the credit card brands would ever set a base rate of 1.5% for a credit card. So they would maybe set that for a debit card, but not a credit card. So what happens is you say to this company, okay, yeah, 1.5% sounds great. And then you sign up and then they kind of tell you, oh, by the way, that 1.5% was only dealing with debit cards. Your credit card's going to be 4%. And so they kind of do these little shady tactics like that. So when you're doing your research, make sure that you find a company that is completely transparent with what their rates are. And then second, too, especially for attorneys and for law firms, you need to find a company like LawPay or others that do it in a compliant fashion because there's very specific rules that go into trust accounting and credit cards and making sure that you don't commingle funds with regard to credit cards and their fees and things like that with your trust account. And I can absolutely send you stuff on that or I can talk to you about that, but it's very important because that's one of the, I think it's the top reason why attorneys get disciplined and sanctioned with their state bars is because of that trust account violation when it comes to money and then also with credit cards. So it's super easy to deal with, but you need to deal with a payment processor that understands that and understands that importance of not commingling those funds with your trust account. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, that was great. And just to confirm, is this jturk@lawpay.com the best way for them to directly contact you to discuss those questions further? Or okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that also led into my next question I have. What does make LawPay different from other processors?
Really a little bit of what I already discussed. It's LawPay kind of started because there was nothing else like it in the industry about making sure that your trust account wasn't being commingled with your operating account when it comes to credit cards. And so that's the biggest thing because if that becomes commingled, it's basically an automatic violation of your, automatic violation per the state bar and you can risk your law license. People have gotten disbarred over trust account violations like this where you're intermingling these funds and your credit card fees and things like that in your trust account. So I can absolutely go over it for anybody who needs to, but that's the biggest separator and the fact that LawPay doesn't allow any third-party debiting from your trust account, period, end of story, because the money that's in that trust account is not the law firm's money. The money that's in there is technically the property of the client until the law firm bills and moves that money from the trust account. Then it becomes the property of the firm. But until then, the money in that trust account per statute is not yours. It is the client's, period, end of story. You can't touch it. And if you do without having actually earned those fees, it's technically theft because, again, it's not your money.
Great. I think that is all the questions. If anybody has any last-minute questions they'd like to send over in the chat box, that would be great. Just a reminder, you will be receiving an email tomorrow with the recorded link to today's webcast, as well as a link to the PDF copy of today's slides. And Jordan, would you like to close out with any last comments?
Sure. I just want to say thank you all very, very much for having me. Again, email me, or if you need anything whatsoever or have any questions about this, because again, I implemented all of this when at my old firm to get money in the door before the year ends. So truly, I want to help y'all get paid in any way, shape, or form that I can, and I want to make y'all look good to your partners. So I'm here for you if you need anything.
Thank you so much, Jordan. This has been great information today, and we appreciate you being here, as well as thank you to Latte for sponsoring today's webcast, and thank you to all of you attendees for joining us today. This does conclude today's webcast. Thank you, and this recording will be available, or you can visit our event calendar to sign up for future webcasts.